Good morning, Dr. Brad.
Filtered.
Apparently, in your ongoing attempt to unify Christianity and our work, you appeal to Dr. E. Michael Jones regularly, which is sensible since he seems to be the most influential working theologian. Is he really just a theologian? He's sort of
He's
he's
a
a
literary historian. I mean, he's quite a across all.
yeah, but he does buy into the theology, right?
Buy
So
in.
he's, huh?
No, I don't think buy into is a good word any more than you do buy into science.
All right, sorry. I
He,
actually I had that little thing in the back of my head saying, "Don't say that,"
no,
and I didn't listen to it. Um, uh, so basically, no, but he's a believer, right? He's a true believer. He does work in uh, the philosophy of theology, right? And he does approach it as a literary historian, which is a fascinating concept. It's sort of like it's vaguely analogous to our use of multiple fields, right?
so I don't. It's not vaguely. And it's like this is you call him a true believer, like you're a true believer in the science. Okay, he is. He knows what's right. And it's like and this is what I wanted to say in this topic because it was interesting. I watched him and I've come to understand. I've been studying his work for some time.
Yes, I know, and you understand that if you study it like you study mine, which is that means you really understand it.
Well, that's my goal. And it's like the interesting function of it is this is I note that Professor Jones looks at people's behavior and then he finds the causative error. He finds a causative error and then he has terminology that describes it. And the key one that is related to Protestantism is this sola scriptura, which causes people to find the error they prefer.
Find the error that what?
They prefer and justify it with their use of sola scriptura.
Yeah, I think find the error that they prefer is a little bit confusing to me. I think,
Okay, so I would say this, they justify the error they prefer.
yeah, but give me an example of an error.
Oh, so it would be this is Martin Luther justified his breaking of his vows of celibacy with the nuns using this type of error because he preferred to justify that behavior.
Oh, okay. So this is an interesting. Now that I get where you're going, is this? I want to test if it's true. Okay, give me a second.
Of
Um,
course.
what you're saying is that um, because Catholics practice dogma, which is basically church philosophy, right?
Okay.
Instead of scriptural interpretation, right? The church does the interpretation and they come out with dogma, which is explanation, right? The church can mediate weird differences and gradually move toward a very accurate representation of the world, even if that representation uses the divine as causal instead of the natural order as causal. What you're saying with Protestantism is because they lack the intermediary step, they went to proper fundamentalism proper, and that requires you to lie or
No,
or
no, no.
err
It
is
doesn't
error
require you, but the scriptures are sufficiently
ambiguous.
vague that allow you to make errors that the church has corrected by their understanding of what is really happening.
Yeah, but yeah, again, the point is you have to do it. yourself. Or in other words, people have to do it, the church doesn't do it.
The,
In other words,
the church is they failed the intermediary function,
yes, right,
which is the church is trying to help keep your guardrails up.
yes, and
And so the people who rely solely on the scripture can find anything they want in there, and that's evidenced by Martin Luther and his behavior with the nuns.
okay, so that would state that the causal that would further amplify that the causal difference between the Heinau lines Protestants and the below the Heinau lines Catholics is not due entirely to, it's due not only to church corruption, but political corruption because of the capture of both. And that the Protestant Revolution is more a factor of the corruption and the Heinau line, in other words, being a higher trust society. So when you look for the low trust societies in Europe, they're in Catholic and Orthodox countries. They're not in Heinau countries within the Heinau line, which is largely the Germanic ones. Why is that? Well, that's because the state in the Holy Roman Empire of Germania was quite weak, and the manorial system, which was the benevolent evolution of the feudal system, right? It means it's no longer you're a slave to your property. It's manorial in the sense that you can't get land unless you're a good upstanding citizen. In other words, you can't get farmland, and so you're fucked. So that led to a high trust society. And so because of the stronger state in the South and the more corruption of both the state and the church compared to the lower corruption in the North and the weaker state, the middle class ethic was able to emerge more strongly, producing the high trust society. And so what this ought to tell us is that it's sort of like being forgiving of the church. In other words, appreciate the church's model, despite that all human systems go corrupt, and don't appreciate the Protestant model, despite the fact that those systems, which are middle class systems, tend to crush corruption. So the issue is really the issue at stake, which we talk about as faith, because we always want to make excuses for why we're right, is really just a natural reaction to the power, the state, and the combined corruption of the state and the church not being able to be broken in the South, and the combined power of the state and the church being weak, and then favoring the state in the North. And that would be the rational interpretation of it. In other words, people don't invent ideas out of whole cloth. They encounter a problem, and they invent, or an opportunity, and they invent ideas to justify the seizure of the opportunity.
That's right. And so what's interesting is in this little discourse that it occurs to me that E. Michael Jones looks at things the opposite direction that you do.
Yes, he does.
And so he's looking at individuals and their behaviors. You're looking at populations and their behaviors.
Yes.
So he looks at an individual and their behavior and goes, here's the error of thought that caused this behavioral error based on failure of conscience or something like that.
Right, but my argument would be, and I would be correct as usual.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Did you say that? Did you see that coming? You had to see that coming. Is that justifications follow incentives, and so that the individual is making that choice, error or not, because of the incentives that exist in the population.
You're speaking of the nuns in the covenant that can be taken out. That was a hat tip to Martin Luther himself, who took him out by the wagon load.
It might be funny, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I mean, I don't.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I just like to say it's just it's a
So this
different
is
way
this.
to
So
look at it.
let's take it another. Let's bring in a third dimension. Bring in my friend Rudyard.
Yes.
And so Rudyard thinks about the individual in the context of the population at the time.
Okay.
So he will, where I would favor, I would look at that and I would favor the aristocracy's attempt to keep maturing the population.
Right.
And Rudyard would tend to favor making it easier on the minds and spirits of the population. Right. So those are just, it's not the interpreting history differently. It's which thing do you think is which problem do you bias in favor of solving? Well, let's listen to Jones. I'm not sure if that's the same decision he's making. He does
Oh,
think in terms. Hold on, let me finish the question so
of course.
I know you can answer it because that's why I'm asking it. Is it he's thinking of the individual, right? And the individual's framework of understanding provided more by the community than by anything else, right? It's the community, and the church is the one who would educate. So therefore, the church educates the community. So what is his choice? Because his choice seems to be that not so much the individual as the individual and social as is Rudyard's, not so much the aristocracy in the population as his mind. His interest seems to be the church and the individual. And I'm trying to figure out why you would choose that. And this is, and I think I know the answer. Almost there. I'm sorry, I'm almost there. Is that I think you would feel that the church can control that which Rudyard senses. In other words, it can give people the framework for not feeling alone that Rudyard understands, but doesn't with his, so the individual in a society understands as a problem, but has no one to go to. So I think what he's saying, I think what he's, in other words, most of us don't understand what we're doing like I'm ascribing what we're doing, right? It's all subconscious value judgments, right? But there's, like we always understand, there's this sort of logic to the universe, and there's only so many logical biases you can make in a given circumstance. So he's attributing, I think, the leadership, belonging, and mindfulness that comes from the success of a church in its discourse to producing that which Rudyard can explain at any point in time in all of history, and which I would take for granted as an unnecessary burden out of my concern as aristocracy. So tell me if that makes sense to you.
Feels like this is my understanding is E. Michael Jones is concerned, and I asked him specifically how he got here many years ago, and he told me, he said, I wanted to know what happened to the church. And so he sees the church as damaged, and he's seeking to repair the damage to the church, which he regards as the only institution in human history that's designed to make people better.
This is probably true.
I find nothing that I can.
I was trying to say, I hope I said, I think that's what I said. I may not have said it as well as you, but yes.
No, I agree. And that's like, so.
Because education is not the same as the church. The church can also educate.
Yes.
But what the church is doing is training your subconscious to work together in a trustworthy society, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think
you
that's
just sold me on Dr. Jones.
What's that?
I think you finally just sold me on Dr. Jones.
He's
I'm not like other people. I have to understand, and now I understand.
And so the interesting function of it is he's doing it, he's using he's using language as a measuring tool, the same as we do, finding causes for error, and he identifies the source of the error in doctrine, Catholic doctrine, which we went over the 5 solas in the Catholic thinking regarding the errors of Protestantism that are introduced as potential sources of individual error.
Okay, so let me take the question further. I'm going to agree with Jones's position, making people better. That's actually really great, right?
Yeah.
So the European aristocracy sees is a more paternal view, which is that there's a natural hierarchy of capability of people, and only those people that can demonstrate their capacity to bear the burden of responsibility have merit to include in the polity. The rest are essentially children, or realistically domesticated animals, because that's all they're good for is labor. Right? That's actually how they think about it, right? I mean, now would they say that at the time? They'd do it the way the church does, which is couch it more nicely, but that's actually how they thought about it. And if you could get into Aristotle's mind, I'm sure it was quite a bit harsher than that. Is that, if we didn't need them for all this manual labor, we should just get rid of them all, right? Would be I'm sure not sure that's not my topic. I'm sorry. I was just being sarcastic. Um, oh, come on. You knew I was joking. So anyway, so yeah, I think that's the aristocratic point of view. But they did see it as their job to domesticate man, right? Right. But how did they do that? Well, they didn't have a system for it except allowing for emergence, which other cultures
Yeah,
didn't.
I think that's correct. It's not that they were intending to cause that, but they created the capacity for that to occur,
Yes,
and they didn't think about it. They
right.
just go, we need more guys that know what they're doing to get this working right, because we need more.
So the church comes along and says, we got this is really this is probably they if I could go back in time and talk to the Byzantines, right? I'm sure there's something along the lines of, wow, those people in those underclasses in the West, they're fucking animals. And they're lecherous, destructive, whatever animals. And we've got to domesticate them. They probably also thought like the Democrats do, which if we domesticate them, that means we have power over them. And now we can get rid of this aristocracy the way the Democrats want to get rid of the Republicans. Okay, fine. Right. And so they bring it in, but they actually did try to make a moral man. In other words, they actually tried to construct it, not just give opportunity to those who were willing. And then when we get the era of education, now we've got the church for moral citizenry, and we've got education for basic skills. So the problem is we've lost the physical training and the moral education, and we're trying to give them basic skills without the moral education, which means they're meaningless. And we're wondering why there's this crisis of confused morality out there, which is the letting loose. I wrote this: the letting loose of the borderline personality, histrionic and antisocial and narcissistic personalities are able to be let loose because they're never trained in the first place, and the population is therefore not trained to constrain those people, which is, it's 30% of women and 20% of men that fall into those two categories. It's not a small number of mentally unhealthy people without the church to provide those means of discipline. So then we got the education. So the question is, this leads to the difficult question. Given that only some people can tolerate the supernatural. I can't, right? You know how I work, right? And and right now it's looking like only 20 to 30% of populations can. That's probably those with personalities that have so much neuroticism that they have to have it. Then if that's not possible, can the church convert to the method, one of the methods of natural law, continuing their evolution, and say, but this is divine, right? This natural law is divine, and then this is what we're teaching, and fully mature the church to that position. In order to do that, you can't get people to go to church for the news today, right? I mean, people don't. You can get people to go to church for rituals like marriage and death and birth, right? Those are the things that the church generally controls and probably only should control. The state should be out of it. But if people won't go to the church, then the church has to be in control of education, right? There's no other way to do it. And then the church must provide value. In other words, other than education, which I've said should be the banking, finance, and legal, and the banking, legal, and psychological, not medical, but they could do the medical too. And so could we make a church of natural law that the Christian churches could mature into, which would still teach being as Christ, right? Which is not the wrong answer, by the way, right? It's not the wrong answer. Being as Christ in the context of something that was more believable, because you can interpret it. The church could even say whether you believe in omniscient God, you do, in other words, external to the universe, you believe as the universe as God, or God is within the universe, then natural law still holds, and you will choose to worship God as you see fit. I wonder if that would fly, because that's the only, we have to find some way, because the other way to do it is say we got to get morality into education and fuck the church, and education has completed the takeover of the church. All right, now you give me that fucking look again, like my rant was too long, but I felt like I made my arc.
This one up, man. I think we did a good job.
You want to wrap it up? You're not going to disagree with me or agree with me?
Not at all. No, this is the right answer, and it's like this: the natural law is the right answer. And then, but it has to be more to theological bases for the children.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Mythology, philosophy, science, right?
Yeah.
Right. Actually,
So,
it's mythology, literature, philosophy, science. If I'm accurate.
Right. So the issue is to create the social proofs, social structure that substantiates that structure.
Yes.
So that and it's to protect the innocent.
Yes.
That's the job of the church.
Which are I don't think they understood what you were saying. What the left is doing today is attacking the innocent, right?
Yes.
Breaking them. And what you're saying, the church can defend the innocent. Yes.
That's the job of the church.
All right. All right. So we're going to wrap that one up now.
Well, may I?
Yes.
This is your opportunity, everybody.
Do your enthusiasm.
Well, more enthusiasm?
No, I want to do that because that over the top shit's great.
What madness? That means you in the back, no, the one with the hat. You hit like and then subscribe and the notification bell so you don't show up again with your hat on. This is inside work. Kurt, they're going to leave comments about that.
They are?
Especially the guy with the hat. We want to hear what he has to say, because E. Michael Jones, make sure you mention him in this the topical name.
I'll put it in. I'll put it in there. All right. Thank you very much, Brad.
Kurt, it's been great. Let's do it again. Let's do a working session.
All right. I gotta find the off button.
Can you do it?
Stop recording. You ready?
You did it.